Karianne Elisabeth, welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. I heard about you from, I believe it was a Facebook friend suggestion request. I don't know if someone sent me to that or Facebook sent me to that, but I'm glad that they did because, well, you seem very eager to speak and very interested to have to do with my show. I might as well point this out again that I've never seen anybody who wants to be a guest on my show that's going to be a guest on my show ever want to be so interactive with my show Facebook group. And thank you again for subscribing to my Patreon account to listen to my future shows in their entirety. And folks, I need to tell you guys, I understand everybody's strapped for money, but it really would be nice if you guys could pay me on Patreon to listen to my show's entirety. Nice for you because you'll get out valuable information that you wouldn't get on my show if you didn't do that. But what the hell? I'm going to say this anyway. My day job is in serious jeopardy right now. Let's just say that the dreaded "if you don't get the shot by mid-October, you may get pink slipped" warning was come out today, and I don't know where that's going to lead me and a lot of other people on this planet. So let's hope for the best with that. And well, also my shows that are not in their entirety on YouTube, they're also uploaded to Cos.tv. I would like people to listen to that, the interviews on Cos.tv and not YouTube. Do listen to YouTube for 15 seconds for the sake of giving me a view credit, and then click on the link description, in the video description on the link to the Cos.tv link, where I'd rather you listen to that. That is a blockchain monetization channel, so I can generate a little money the more people that listen to my shows. So with that being said, Karianne Elisabeth, thank you for coming on. Thank you for wanting to be so interactive with my show and me. And well, now I'm going to give you the chance to have the floor. I don't have Alex Jones-itis. I don't interrupt my guests. So I will let you take as long as you need to tell your life story from a primary source perspective to describe who you are and what you experienced that caused you to do the stuff that you do. Please don't take forever because we've only got an hour and I do have some serious nitty-gritty questions to ask, but please get into some important stuff. And by all means, be fun and educational with this because I'm asking you to be a primary source and all. So you got the floor.
Well, first, Andrew, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. And that's the reason why I am involved, or I do want to be involved in what you're providing, because I think it is a valuable service to people. And I also believe that we should be supporting one another in these times, particularly, as you mentioned, these are difficult, chaotic times, and those of us who feel aligned with one another should be supporting one another and speaking out for one another when we can. And so this is just a small way for me, to express my gratitude in you being interested in my work and my perspective. So thank you. And it does feel good to support you and to support one another. So I appreciate it. So I'm Karianne, and it's interesting when I look back on my life, I can see a through line of events that led to my spiritual awakening. So it's not really as if there's one event, I think, in our lives that wakes us up, but I didn't identify as a child, to being a magical person per se. And my awakening just came in the latter part of my life in my 40s. And that process for me happened as a result of an injury that I sustained while working. I worked as a firefighter and paramedic for 12 years, and I was injured on duty and unfortunately had to have a surgery. And before and after the surgery, I continued to have chronic pain and muscle spasms, and I felt really debilitated. And I felt betrayed by my body, and I felt betrayed by the medical system because I wasn't getting help. I mean, I wasn't healing, really. And, I was really struggling with also loss of identity because I was very connected to that identity of being a firefighter. I had always wanted to be of service, and this was my service to the world at the time. And so during this time, I had a follow-up appointment with my surgeon, and I said, I've been very compliant with everything that you've asked me to do or everything that you've suggested, and my body is just not healing. Is there anything else that we can do? And he said, and I bless him so deeply for saying this, he said, you could try acupuncture. He said, acupuncture has been shown to have a positive effect on pain, particularly back and neck pain. And that was such a revelation to me at the time because, you know, I had been indoctrinated into this Western medical system, and I had never explored any of these alternative or integrative options. So that really was the beginning of my healing and the beginning of my spiritual awakening too, when I look back, because I went to acupuncture, and that process of receiving the acupuncture and nourishing myself in a different way, like listening to my body's, you know, messages, thinking of them as messages to me versus thinking of them as a betrayal, and really just nourishing myself with good food and thinking, you know, loving, supportive thoughts about myself and my body. You know, all of those things really shifted my experience profoundly, and I actually started to heal. And I can say, you know, to this day, I am free of chronic pain, and it's the most incredible thing because, you know, during that experience, I really couldn't have seen a way out of it at that time. And so I was so inspired by this experience that I was having, and I wanted to share it with other people. So I became a health coach so that I could, you know, actually share some of the science of lowering inflammation and those kinds of things. But what also started to happen was that I could hear not only messages from my body more clearly, but messages from my higher self. That's what I call it. I call it my higher self. At the time, I wasn't exactly sure what it was because I just knew that it wasn't coming from my conscious mind. It wasn't something I was consciously creating. But now that I can see that it's my higher self in concert and connection with, you know, other spirit guides and angels, etc. But I feel these beings speaking to my higher self, and my higher self delivers the information to the human version of me. And so I began writing these messages that were meant for me from my higher self and my team, my cosmic team, as I call them. But I knew when I was writing these messages that they were really meant for a wider audience. They were meant for everybody. And so I started sharing them on Facebook. And, you know, I really hope to share them even more widely in a way that's not digital, in a way that we can actually interact with them, like in an oracle card deck or a book. So that's what led me to where I am today in terms of what I'm doing. Another thing that I've explored is energy healings. I became certified as a Reiki practitioner, and I've been developing my own system inspired by Reiki and my own healing abilities for remote healing. And then I'm also certified in biodynamic touch therapy, which is a hands-on in-person therapy. And I'm really excited about these because in the work that I've done so far, I've seen them to be really powerful. And, you know, this is the time for us to realize that we are creator beings, that we have much more agency than we've ever been led to believe in terms of our physical health and well-being. And we do have the ability to heal ourselves and one another through these other methods that, you know, are being censored and canceled and crushed by, you know, the medical community as it is. And so I just really want to share that message of empowerment and hope with everybody.
Yes, and regarding the technologies that can come out and the ways, the healing methods that can make what is being done today obsolete. There is one thing that is supposed to be coming out in the very near future, if my former colleague, former colleague from Atlantis in a past life is correct, Ted Marr. We used to own a shop together in Atlantis. He said when I spoke to him, and he talked about how there were plans earlier this year to get the holographic medbed technology out, but there are forces within the powers that be structure that still have control who threaten to do really bad things if those technologies were released. But Ted said that those forces are not going to have that much control come later this year, early next year, and we're talking like Thanksgiving, Christmas time this year at the earliest, maybe New Year's at the latest. He says the holographic med beds will be released, which in from a spiritual sense is a blessing in many ways, but the way it's a shock to the system would be quite detrimental, you would think. You would think all the MDs out there would be like, okay, now what am I supposed to do? So that raises a bunch of questions like, okay, if money's still going to be around, where are we supposed to get income if the machines took our jobs? Bless the machines for being able to use great spiritual technology to heal everyone. So, as someone who's in the health field and wants to see better health for everybody, but I had about ask, how are people not going to suffer if that means no more paycheck for me because the robots, or in this case the holographic medbed machine, took my job? How is the society supposed to handle something like that? And do you think it will happen in the time period that Ted Mars says it will happen, or are we going to have to wait a little longer for some reason?
That's really interesting. I do believe these technologies exist. I haven't experienced them firsthand. I don't know that we're going to get them as soon as that. I do feel like we're still in the process of dismantling society as it is. And I do believe in putting our energy into the creation of something new versus trying to fix what's old. But I'm not exactly sure what that transition looks like. And I feel like we're still in that process. I mean, we're still thick in the process of this kind of corruption taking place and the awareness of the corruption. Like, I feel like we're just on the leading edge of a wider number of people being aware of what's really happening in society. And I don't feel like we're at the crux of that yet. I mean, I feel like that's coming maybe in the next few years, where there's a large disclosure event, by which I mean that it's obvious that these people that we have held in esteem, that are our authority figures, are not actually who we have believed them to be, that they are involved in corruption and manipulation and greed. And I just think that we have more to go through, which I'm sure is not what you would like to hear. But that's my sense, is that I feel like we have a little bit more to go through and to be revealed and to evolve through before this technology is released. Because I agree with what you're saying, that, we have to have a way to implement it into society that allows for people to retain a sense of self and service. And I'm not sure how that would happen if they were released in this way, particularly because, the majority of people have no idea what this technology is. And I just feel like it would be very abrupt for that to come into their awareness in this way. So I think it's going to be maybe a little bit longer.
A little bit longer. Well, astrologically speaking, if you believe Pluto and Capricorn signals the destruction of everything that's not in humanity's best interest, you would have to think it would be mid to late 2024. Of course, in April 2024, we got that solar eclipse that crisscrosses America, which some say is supposed to signal the end of the Roman Empire of the modern era, that is the United States Corporation. I don't know how that would translate into everything. I hope it's going to be a nice ride and not a chaotic ride, but people at the individual level can certainly do better to improve their individual lives so they can weather through the storm at an individual level, and certainly being of service to others in the process will help immensely. Let's get back to ways that people can help themselves. It says in your little bio here on your website, wholetruthaz.com. By the way, I clicked on that in the email that you sent me, and all it did was take me some Outlook Express thing. You kind of had the link wrong there. Make sure you get a chance to fix that, so in case you send it to anybody else, it doesn't do the same problem. But that is the right address for your site, and it says here in your little bio on there. I'll use the bio that you sent me. In the video description, but just here on the hi, I'm Karianne thing with your photo. Very nice photo there of you. It says here, I believe there is always nutrition and lifestyle strategies. Okay, nutrition strategies. I personally have been going through a lot of effort to try to keep my word, to show and prove that I have the ability to get more and more vegetarian every single day of my life. I have said many times that I expect the graph of my eating habits, meat eating and dairy product and animal product eating habits, it would probably go down, down, down and get closer and closer and closer to zero, but never actually reach zero until the day I die. I can't really see myself giving up meat and dairy and other animal foods like eggs entirely, but I know I have the ability to cut down on the only meat that I actually buy from Whole Foods now. The place I shop at is chicken, and I mean that's not the only meat I eat though, because I also get some food given to me from my folks for family dinners and such. But that is the only one I can buy myself, and I'm sure I could live off that. And I did go to India for the International Yoga Festival for a little over a week, and I had no choice but to eat vegetarian, and I loved it so much. I think I could if I wanted to. Do that. Although I probably want to eat the cheese a little bit more often, because I can't give up the animal products entirely, and they still have some dairy products in India. Although I love meat more than dairy, I will say that. And I do really like eggs, but still trying to cut back on them too. So when it comes to trying to become vegetarian, a lot of people are trying to become vegetarian, and some say it's kind of natural with the way this planet raises in vibrational frequency. Your people are going to just want to eat less animal products as the vibrational frequency rises. No matter how hard it may be for humans to give up animal products, it will come naturally to eat less and less of it, which is what I want for myself. So can you give me and anyone else who wants to do what I do full-blown advice? And also, do you think it may be dangerous to go vegan? Because I've seen what veganism can do to people. Some people have become total assholes after being vegan, and regarding calling people terrible things if that they see them eating animals, and maybe the veganism and lack of animal products warp their mind or something and rewire their brains. So anything you want to say? You're laughing, but it's also no laughing matter when you see what it can do to people. I've seen what it does to
Yes,
people.
no, I absolutely understand what you're saying, and I've experienced that myself from the perspective of being a vegan, because I am vegan. However, I think that those people that you're referring to are people that have adopted a mentality in which they are so aligned with the ideology of veganism that they become very rigid and very critical and very judgmental. And they kind of forget, I think, the reason. Well, I should speak for myself. The reason that I became vegan, firstly, was for health, because it lowered my inflammation and allowed me to be free of chronic pain. But secondly, it really aligns with my heart, because I do believe that all beings are valuable and all beings are precious. And I am reverent of life in all forms. And I realized that it wasn't serving me to consume animals in this way, that I somehow, without knowing it consciously, because I had been an omnivore my whole life until this health crisis, I didn't realize that I had, I believe, a sense of almost background guilt or just misalignment with eating animals. And when I found out that it was possible, because I had been taught, in society and the way that we live here with the standard American diet, is that it's necessary for us to eat animals in order for us to maintain our health. And so, I did it for that reason. But when I discovered that that wasn't actually true, and the opposite possibly is true, depending on your makeup, because we're all individuals and we're all different, it was like I was given permission not to eat animals. I felt an incredible sense of relief. I mean, it was astounding to me. I did not even know that I had been carrying that burden. I just knew that suddenly I felt very relieved about my choices, and it felt great for me. So I do think that the way that we raise the animals is very connected to the way that we feel when we eat them. And I also agree that, eating more plants is beneficial for health for most people. I mean, there are exceptions. There's no one size fits all medicine. There's no one size fits all nutrition, because we are all unique life forms. And for me, my vibration has raised significantly. I had a spiritual experience through my physical body, through changing the inputs in my physical body. I became adept at hearing messages from beyond my conscious mind. So I will say, I do think there is something to it based on my own experience and experiences that I've heard from many other spiritual people who have had similar awakenings in changing their nutrition and their lifestyle. But I don't think that you have to do that in order to have those experiences. I think what you have to do, if you choose, is you listen to your own body. Like, when you get to that place where you can actually trust your own body and your own instincts, because there is a point at which we are driven by cravings. We are driven by the microbiota that live in our gut that drive our cravings. And so if you eat a lot of processed food, your body is going to have microorganisms that feed on that type of food, and they're going to continue craving for that type of food. Same with animal food. So when we get to the point where we've sort of come to more of a homeostasis or a balance, and we can really trust what our body's telling us in terms of whether we need to eat some type of animal protein or not. And if we choose to, I think the source is extremely important. So trying to find animals that are humanely raised, utilizing the community-supported agriculture when we can to get local products or farmers markets, those kinds of things, because as I'm sure 99% of the meat that's provided to us that we can buy in a supermarket comes from confined animal feeding operations. And that is not a humane way for us to acquire sustenance for ourselves.
Indeed. And regarding asking your angels and guides whenever you're about to eat something, I do this every time I eat food, even if it's non-animal food. I ask for only the highest good to come from the food. When it comes to doing that, can you trust your angels and guides to make sure that the highest good comes from the food, or is there maybe some law that the angels follow saying, well, there are certain times we can't interfere. If you're going to choose to eat an animal that's suffered, you have to live with the price of that, and we cannot come and save you in that regard. And this is actually going to tie into something I'm going to ask you a little later on regarding asking angels and such. But now let's just talk about asking angels for help regarding food that you eat. Can they make sure that you always get the highest good from your food? If you find that the chicken that you're about to eat at a restaurant or whatever that your friends take you out to was made in inhumane condition, it's the only thing that they serve, it's the only thing you got, and you're like, okay, I'll eat it to satisfy, but I gotta ask my angels and guides to make sure there's no bad karma that comes from eating this chicken that was tortured in the most unpleasant ways. I mean, can you trust your angels and guides to make sure that only the highest good will come from that food, or can they not totally get the highest good to come from the food? Or do you not know the answer to that because you're not an angel?
Well, I think it's interesting. It's a really interesting question. And I think intention really is everything. So when you are in that situation where you're in the restaurant and you're provided with food and you don't have a lot of information about the source of the food, I think it's important just to have gratitude for this this life, that's been given for you to nourish your life. And I think that intention and that gratitude really goes a long way toward transmuting any kind of negative experience that might be available from having, consumed that sort of energy. So I think, you don't only give power over to something external to you, but you also have the power within yourself. And just using gratitude and intention is really powerful. But I've also seen people that have kind of make that kind of a habit. And I feel like that's really detrimental, and not in the spirit of healing, because it's almost becomes a form of spiritual bypassing, I think, when I look at it, like saying it's a way of absolving responsibility or absolving guilt, when you do that regularly. But I think in the situation you described, you just have gratitude and intention, and that's everything.
Well, yes, you're raising up a can of worms there regarding our ability to do spiritual things. Many would say that that's easier said than done. Just look at the well-known scene from Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, where Yoda tells Luke Skywalker that he's mistaken in thinking that taking a ship out of a bog is no different than moving rocks around. As Luke asserts, it's totally different, and Yoda says it's no different. It's only different in your mind. We're all luminous, not this crude matter. And Luke said, "You want the impossible," and then Yoda made him look stupid by getting the ship out of the bog. And Luke said, "I don't believe you did that." And Yoda said, "That's why you failed." Well, okay, I'd like to look Yoda in the eyes and say, "Okay, why don't you do the same thing with the planet Jupiter and get it out of our solar system? Can you try? Can you do that?" And would he say, "Well, getting ship out of bog is one thing. Jupiter is totally different." And I was like, "Okay, then why'd you mock Luke for saying the similar thing about rocks to you?" Okay, you get what I'm trying to get here. It's some things are easier said than done, and you think maybe when it comes to things like telekinesis, there are so many factors involved, not just the size of the object, but also maybe like the state of matter of the object, or the position of the state of consciousness relative to your consciousness, or something that makes a difference as to whether or not you can move it or something. How do we make sense of this? That well, there is no difference between moving a ship out of a bog and moving rocks, but if you ask Yoda to move the planet Jupiter out of a solar system, he wouldn't be able to do it.
That's so interesting. That's such an interesting question. I love that. I think a lot of it is relative to our consciousness and the way that we've been experiencing reality, the way that we experience reality in this 3D matrix, if you will, where we believe that we are, purely physical beings, and that we are only able to do things with this purely physical body. And I think a lot of that also is not only our experience, but the programming of our experience. And that might open up a whole other can of worms. But, I believe there are forces that are anti-life and anti-human. And I believe that those forces would rather have us believe that we are only these physical beings, and that we only have the capabilities of these physical bodies. And so that's how we've been programmed. And I think it's a process for us to understand that it's not true, that it's an illusion. And I think the more that we believe it, like truly believe it, like deeply, profoundly believe it, the more that we are able to access these true spiritual abilities. But I think for most of us, it's not a quantum leap. It is a slow process based on experience. So when you start with the small things, like the rocks, or which food should I eat today, or which route should I drive to work today, etc., and you find confidence in those small experiences where you have confirmation that you are able to do something you didn't think you could do, or you're able to access knowledge that you didn't think you could access. When you have those small things, it builds up the trust and the confidence and the belief that these things are possible. And that's when we can get into doing things that are larger. But I do think it's a process for most of us. I think it's possible that we could make a quantum leap, but we're in the density of these physical bodies with this physical experience. And I don't know how many thousands or millions of years of programming that we're just this physical matter. So I think it's going to take us some time to move beyond that, to understand that we are much more powerful than we have ever known or been led to believe.
Yeah, there is a biblical prophecy of sorts saying that we'll remain in physicality for another 1,000 years, and Bashar did say something like that. But if that's the Bible, like, you don't really know if you can trust the Bible because there's a lot of manipulation there. So I'm not really going to go into that area. But regarding what you said about taking baby steps and all, there was a period of time many years ago, well, not many years ago, but a while back, where I would try to master telekinesis. I took a teeny weeny itsy bitsy piece of paper that I tore off the corner of a paper, no more than a few millimeters thick and wide, and put it in a little spot, and using all the telekinetic powers that I could try to move the paper. And yeah, I got nowhere with that, and I eventually decided, you know what, screw this. I got better things to do with my life than try to move a little bitty piece of paper. But then again, when I'm going to these Reiki healings that I had been going to before the cerveza sickness hit and a lot of Reiki centers got shut down, I was going to some regular Reiki meetups. Some of them were offered for free on a few nights. And I would ask people to give me Reiki, but people encouraged me, why don't you try giving Reiki to other people? It wouldn't hurt for you to try, and as long as you have good intentions, you can't possibly be doing any harm. If you have good intentions and you do everything you can as your angels and guides to make sure the negative entities can't sabotage you and sabotage your patients and all that. So I gave it a try. I can't really know for a fact that I was helping the people. I'd like to think I was, but since I believe your bio said something about how you have experience with Reiki, is it reasonable for them to just say, come on and try Reiki, you got nothing to lose and everything to gain by giving it a try? Or do you think that they should be a little more, they should know better than that and should try to teach me something before they encourage me to do that? And also with the telekinesis, can you please perhaps help me make sense of why, even though I made every effort to acknowledge that telekinetic powers are real and I have the ability to do this, it didn't help me move that teeny weeny paper one little bit? What exactly is my problem there? And I'm not the only one, I'm sure. Why is it some people can do it and some can't?
That's so interesting. I've never actually tried that experiment, Andrew, but I'm really curious about that. I am not sure that I've reached uh, that level in my spiritual awakening where I really believe that I can do that, which is interesting. I didn't know that I had that belief until you just mentioned that. So that's interesting for me to identify a limiting belief and something that I will work to unravel. But I wonder, Bruce Lipton talks about this kind of thing where our beliefs are powerful enough to affect physical reality. And so what are your beliefs? Do you believe that you're going to be able to drink that strychnine and have no reaction to it? Because the belief has to be so strong. It has to be 100%, I believe this, and there's no alternative. There's no possibility that there's another reality. And I think that's a really hard place for us to get to as humans, in this experience of limitation that we live daily in our lives. So I think that could be part of it, is maybe we think we believe it, but we don't actually believe it. And as I mentioned before, I do believe that there is programming as well that has to be unraveled. And I think that's a process in itself. But in regards to the Reiki, I had resistance to learning Reiki because I had the experience of this healing energy flowing through me spontaneously. And I started using it on animals, and that's how I discovered that it was flowing through, and it was really hard for my human brain to comprehend that. I thought it was just a fluke the first time, and then it happened like 4 more times. So I was like, okay, I get it. It's not a fluke. And so once I could really believe that that was happening, I thought, well, I don't really need to go to learn a modality that is naturally occurring within me. But I'm really glad that I did, because it gave me structure, it gave me language, it gave me a sense of community from other people who experienced the same thing. And it's just been really supportive for me. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that we all have the ability to do these things, but sometimes we need a little bit more direction or a little bit more structure, or we need other people with us to understand that it is possible. And when you can see somebody else doing it and experiencing it, it makes it possible for you too.
Well, yeah, there's people that have done experiments of envisioning a crop circle in a field, and then the next day that crop circle was in the field, but it was a large group of people that did that. It wasn't just one person, so you had a large group of energy working
Mm-hmm.
together, which does make a difference. And I remember a time when I was sitting on the Siesta Key beach during one of Greg Prescott of InfID's conferences. Love the guy very much. Shout out to you, Greg. And got a conference in 2014 it was. We all gathered in a circle on the beach and we all meditated and we looked up and there was a circle of clouds in the same shape that we were sitting in the circle. So
Oh,
that's
wow.
that definitely it's not magic, it's metaphysics and it is possible. So
Mm-hmm.
I want to point that out. By the way, pointing things out, I want to point out to my listeners at this point in the interview, you'll have to pay me on Patreon to listen to the rest of this interview. I'm sorry, folks. The time has come for me to show the universe that I'm worthy of getting paid, and it's time for a lot of other radio hosts to do the same. And folks, like I said, I really could use your help. I'm really getting nothing with that so far. Kellyanne, thank you for so much for being willing to become a supporter, but I haven't really gotten much of anything from anybody else, and I really could use it because I and many other people have been told if you don't get the dreaded needle by mid-October, you may get pink slipped. So God help us, Creator help us. So